It all starts 3 million years ago. Humanity was just taking its first steps, and that red-haired bastard was already there. He was just an ordinary Australopithecus, riding his boar with a love for the hunt. But there was something about that creature that defied the natural order. Time kept passing and yet he never died. His entire species went completely extinct, but he remained. Countless eras washed over him, yet none of them ever touched him. In the endless flow of time, only one thing drove him: hunting, brawling, and fighting. That was his only purpose, the only thing that made him happy. For more than 3,000 years, his body evolved through endless battles. And with nothing but sheer physical strength, he became a god. The number one god, known as the god of planet Earth, from the divine realm of Mu. He literally looked after the planet, but he was completely bored out of his mind. At that moment, he was standing in this sanctuary of the gods, and with just one step, the whole place shook. The demons, the angels, everyone was terrified. Lucifer, who ranked second, was already saying that the bastard was about to cause trouble again. Mu, sitting on his throne, says, "Damn, I already fought everyone worth fighting. There's no one left who can stand against me. The last time I had a decent fight must have been 1,000 years ago. Being too strong has its downside too." That's when he comes to a conclusion. He's become too strong to fight. Maybe the best solution would be to weaken himself, and then other people would have a chance. It really was a genius plan. He was sure of it. For example, he could take on the fragile body of a human on Earth. That way, every single fight would be a real challenge. He calls for someone named Yang, and a giant dragon appears, stomping down in front of him. And this beast is jacked, standing on 2 legs. This was the supreme god of the sanctuary, Yang, whose name literally means dragon. Incredible. He stares down at Mu, trembling, and asks, "Did you call for me, my lord?" Mu replies, "Listen, you take care of this place because I'm leaving." But Yang wasn't about to let him walk away like that. He activates absolute prison and chains appear, wrapping around Mu's body. Yang tries to act tough, but he's shaking all over, demanding to know how Mu can just leave without an explanation. The gathering of the gods was coming soon, so how was he supposed to deal with that? Mu keeps walking straight ahead, unfazed, saying he doesn't care about something like that. But the dragon breaks down crying, asking, "How am I supposed to deal with all those gods if you're not here? I don't even know where you're going. They're gonna beat me to a pulp if I tell them I have no clue where you disappeared to." Mu, however, just snaps the chains and asks if Yang wants to fight him then. Instantly, Yang wishes him a safe trip. At that moment, Mu wonders whose body he should take over. Listening to the thoughts of every human on Earth, one stands out. Someone questioning if a god even exists, telling him to screw off or send them to another world. Mu says that's perfect, and he'll even throw in a bonus wish. The only issue is how to explain this to Yang. So he tells the dragon he's leaving his body behind and to make sure to take care of it. On top of that, he should look after the person who'll be taking his place. Desperate, the dragon begs, "My lord, you can't leave your body here. If it dies while your soul is away, it'll perish too." But Mu isn't worried. He says he'll be back soon. Meanwhile, we see a demon crumbling away and a boy holding a phone, celebrating that he finally defeated the king. But it was just in a game. Our loser this time, 17-year-old lead ho, says this harem in another world was perfect. The kid really did have some luck. He drops his phone, which smashes on the floor. Ready for the jump with no parachute, he says he can now leave with no regrets. He bids farewell to this cruel world. Then he leaps, shouting that if a god exists, he wants him to screw off. And if that god's angry at what he's doing, then send him to another world. But instead, the boy really does slam into the ground, leaving a pool of blood behind. His hand twitches and he gets back up. Obviously, the one inside the body now is Mu, who's trying to figure out what just happened. In that instant, Leto finds himself face to face with Yang, and neither of them has any idea who the other is. On Earth, Mu struggles to stand, but even his hand doesn't respond properly. The narration explains involuntary muscles, those that move without your conscious will. The heart and internal organs are good examples of things that work on their own. But Mu, who spent 3 million years training his body, had reached the absolute peak of human understanding. He could consciously control every part of his body, even his blood vessels. And somehow, he forced his heart to start beating again and rose to his feet. Looks like he fixed his internal problems by shifting the blood vessels around in a way that stopped the bleeding. Staring at the floor, he thinks to himself that it's been millennia since he bled this much. Coming to this place really was the perfect choice. Now it was time to focus on the memories of this kid, but first, he had to head back home. And for some reason, the boy went home walking on his hands like an idiot. That home, Liho's place, looked more like an abandoned prison. After hours of analyzing, he found out this kid only had one relative, people who lived ridiculously far away and didn't care about him at all, which meant the kid was completely alone in this world. His condition could be described as miserable, dirt poor, bankrupt. His only occupation was going to a place called school, and apparently at that school there was always someone picking fights with him every time he showed up. Honestly, it was the perfect body. He could just walk in and jump straight into a good fight. But the moment he threw a punch, it felt like 5 or 6 muscles in his arm tore apart. Well, actually no. It was because he'd come in walking on his hands like an idiot. This kid really did have terrible muscles. Still, he was excited because muscle pain was something he hadn't felt in millions of years. And wow, I've seen high-class girls working construction look less stiff than this guy in combat. The next day at school, everyone was wondering why there was so much blood on the ground while he just strolled and singing a little tune. In class, they were talking about page 56 when he suddenly slammed the door into the wall, then bounced back and smacked himself in the face like an idiot. While he was rubbing his face, the guy from the memories called out to him, asking what the hell he was doing. I'll call Mu, who's now inside Liho's body, by the name Liho, since that's how everyone around him addresses him. Strangely, he walked up to the guy with that odd expression, asking if he was the person he was looking for. The guy said he'd lost his mind, asked where his glasses were, and then smacked him across the face out of nowhere. He even accused him of selling his glasses to buy food. Truly a broke loser. Blood dripped down as Liho just stood there. That's because the god Mu had his own personal rule when it came to fighting. To him, a fight was only fair when both sides had the will to fight, and he was always waiting for a real brawl. The way he confirmed it was by giving his opponent a chance first. And now he was grinning, licking the blood off his face, saying the chance had arrived. The guy asked if he'd gone completely insane to be laughing like that, but Liho just walked up and smashed him in the face. Immediately, his whole arm started shaking, and it felt like the bones in his hand had cracked. The teacher jumped in right away, asking what the hell they thought they were doing. A fight had already broken out. He told them both to stop and demanded to know what was going on in the middle of his class. But the teacher's authority was basically zero, because the guy just swam at him again. Liho braced himself to defend, and it seemed like he was about to activate his third and fourth forms, but nothing worked because the mana on Earth was different. He took another clean hit right to the face. The other guy told him to stop messing around, while Liho muttered that he was running out of options. His arms were broken, his legs were useless, and he didn't have any magic. If that was the case, he used the how to fight technique. He slammed his head into the guy's hand. Since the skull bone is much tougher, obviously the hand broke first. The guy cried out in pain, and right then Liho saw the perfect opening. Before the guy could even process what happened, he grabbed his arm and slammed his forehead into his stomach, the solar plexus, another human weak spot. And before the guy could recover, Liho lifted his head and rammed it right into his chin. That probably smashed his whole mouth in. The kid dropped to his knees, face first into the floor, while all the bystanders whipped out their phones to record. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Yesterday, Liho was the one getting beaten up, and today he defeated that kid just like that. At that moment, Mu remembers what happens once the thrill of battle fades. Only then do you feel the throbbing pain in the spots where you were hit, that slimy taste in your mouth, the mix of saliva and blood. All of that, obviously, was something he enjoyed immensely, and exactly what he came down to Earth for. He looks at the fool lying on the ground, steps closer, and thanks him. Then he opens his mouth wide, bites down, and spits out the kid's ear. What the hell? Mike Tyson? This Australopithecus really is out of his mind. And the worst part is, this was his way of saying thank you. Like, thanks for the fight, here's a mark to prove I had fun with you. Completely insane. His whole tribe must have been walking around with chewed-up ears, and God help us, even the elf girls weren't spared. Among the gods, though, this was considered a mark of strength. It meant you managed to withstand and entertain the strongest being in the world. But on Earth, the interpretation was completely different. In class, one student says, "Hey, did you hear about that fight earlier?" The lazy one answers, "What about it? Just some random fight." The other replies, "I saw something weird. It looked like the kid actually wanted to get bullied, and the worst part is, the one who lost ended up castrated. Apparently in Korea, when you neuter a cat, you cut a little notch in its ear as a mark. Cruel as hell. Why do that to animals?" Meanwhile, the loser's being carried off in an ambulance, while society's menace is waving goodbye from the window, smiling like he's giving thanks. That's when the teacher arrives and tells Liho to go straight to the teacher's office. Inside, the teacher slumps into a chair and asks if he's lost his mind. How could he dare to do something like that to a classmate? He's about to give him a good scolding, but the kid's face is already flushed red, begging him to hit him instead. He's even breathing heavy, while the teacher mutters that he doesn't even know why he's wasting his time talking to him. He says it's better to call in the parents for a meeting. For now, he should just leave without causing a scene. With no other choice, Liho leaves. Out on the street, he learns that leaving school early just means going straight back home. And of course, no matter how good that fight was, now he really needs time to recover. This body is a wreck. It would be great if he could use good old mana. Call it ki, chakra, nen, whatever. To the gods, that was what set them apart from humans. He recalls that in some worlds, humans became hunters and used it. In others, they could form magic circles and become sorcerers. But on Earth, there's no mana, which means no abilities can be used at all. He tries casting something, but nothing happens. He's going to have to get used to fighting with nothing but his fists again. If he collapsed in bed, recovery would take forever. So for now, it was best to just rest. But at that exact moment, he reappears inside Mu's original body. He opens his eyes and sees the boy clinging to Yon's neck. Right after that, the real Liho tells Mu to give him the dragon. Since Mu was about to obey and send him to another world anyway, it wouldn't hurt to send him off with the dragon. Obviously, that brat knew having a dragon would make conquering any world way too easy. But Mu just raises his hand and says some weirdo had shown up and grabbed his soul. Liho's confused, wanting to know what he's trying to do. Mu answers that he's going to give him exactly what he wished for. The boy would be sent to another world. The scene shifts to Lucifer's domain, where he's standing in front of a portal. The little trio approaches, but before they can even open their mouths, Lucifer says no. Mu, however, says yes. He's decided to send this person, so Lucifer should open the gate. Lucifer immediately turns and asks why he would make such a decision. But with that bitten ear as proof, you already know. Mu simply answers that he decides because he's the strongest, and if Lucifer has a problem with it, then he can step up and fight. Right away, Lucifer realizes there isn't much he can do. If he fights, the guy will enjoy it. If he doesn't fight, then he'll have to obey. In the end, he has no choice. Mu tells him to step aside because he'll open the gate himself. Lucifer warns him not to interfere. Meddling in another god's domain was against the unwritten rules, and besides, he'd be stopped by a barrier. But of course, Mu shatters it instantly. He tells Lucifer to move out of the way because he has more important things to handle. Then he grabs Liho and tells him to jump in. The boy asks what that is, and Mu answers it's exactly what he wanted, a passage to another world. Liho tries to ask for a dragon, but Mu immediately says not a chance. He flicks him with his finger and sends him flying inside, while the kid vanishes shouting that he wanted to be overpowered. Mu thinks to himself that Brat really doesn't want to put in any effort. He just waves goodbye to Lucifer and asks him to look after the boy. But Lucifer is grinding his teeth in rage. Lucifer was a god who originally came from his own domain, the planet Elmuri. There he was known as the Demon King, standing at the peak of all living creatures. His arrogance grew and grew until he decided to challenge an existence known as a god. He summoned a massive sword and hurled it, piercing straight into the chest of his opponent. On that day, Lucifer killed a god, and in that moment, he stole his place and became one himself. He was hailed as the god above all gods. For a long time, he reigned as the absolute master of everything. Invincible, supreme, legendary, unmatched, catastrophic, mythological, good grief. How many adjectives can one guy have? But despite all that glory, he was crushed the moment Mu appeared. Still, he swears that one day he'll take revenge on that worthless human. And at that moment, Mu was just casually riding Yan Yan back home. Meanwhile, on Earth, the kid wakes up muttering that Liho is going to die. All he needs to do is make a call to Cho Hyun, probably that jacked guy pounding away in a punching bag. Or maybe it's Kang Chiel? Or could it be Chong Yang? Because his phone is ringing right there. Ah no, turns out it's that blonde guy. And honestly, that's terrifying. Could the Australopithecus already be facing a monster like him? The blonde picks up the phone and says to talk, while the beaten kid asks if he doesn't want a new phone since his screen just cracked. Judging by the grin on his face, he definitely does. Back in class, the door swings open and the beaten kid walks in. Nobody can believe how badly wrecked he looks. Everyone laughs, saying he always acts tough, but in the end he got destroyed by that loser, and even castrated on top of it. Still don't even know this guy's name, but he slams his backpack to the floor and asks if anyone has a problem with him. If so, they can settle it in a fight. But then a girl steps forward, telling him to sit down and shut up or leave the classroom. The guy explodes with anger, demanding to know if she's crazy, and he grabs a chair. Oh boy, here we go. Yamparko's 2.0 about to hit a girl. But suddenly, a Raymond Dino walks into the classroom. Just look at the size of that teacher's forearms. He asks why the class president is standing, and she quickly sits back down, saying it was nothing. He then tells her to meet him after class for a talk. She wants to know why, but instead he tells her to go check on the boy who caused the earlier commotion, Liho, because he disappeared. He waves her off, saying he's too busy and asking her to help with this problem. Poor girl ends up having to deal with a peculiar one. She knocks on his door, but when he doesn't answer, she turns the knob. Inside, she finds him lying on the floor with cockroaches crawling all around. The boy looked dead. For a moment, she wondered if it was a corpse. Not long after, he's in the hospital, hooked up to an IV. He's been sleeping this whole time. But suddenly, Mu's spirit returns to him. Opening his eyes and staring at the ceiling, he wonders where the hell he is. Clearly, this wasn't the same place where he fell asleep. He looks down, sees his hand connected to the device, and immediately realizes something was invading his body, heading straight into his blood vessels. And amazingly, he can even feel that it's nutrients. What the hell? This guy really does have full control over his body. He notices it's not quite as good as magic, but the effect isn't bad at all. Finally, he's found something worthwhile on Earth. The class president sees him awake with a strange look on his face and tells him to explain what happened. But before he can even start, she cuts him off, saying she was only there to help because the teacher asked her to. Liho realizes she's the one who helped him recover and asks her to wait a second because he wants to ask something. She tells him to hurry up since she needs to get back to school. But Liho urgently needs information about Earth, and the most important question of all, of course, is where he can train his body. She just stares at him, seeing him all crook, one eye half closed, the other wide open, and tells him straight up she knows he doesn't have any money. So the next thing you know, we're at the famous Old Man Park. Honestly, the place is in good shape. It's got everything, including plenty of pull-up bars. Observing it all, the protagonist realizes humanity has evolved a lot compared to 4,000 years ago. Back then, his training was just lifting rocks, climbing mountains, or digging holes. He knows he has to be careful, Considering how advanced this equipment is, there must be some really strong humans around. But in the middle of training, suddenly, a rock smashes into his back. Wait, has that bastard already found him? The guy's sweating with rage, saying it looks like Liho was trying to hide. But Liho just picks up the rock and asks who threw it. The kid says, obviously it was him. But before he can even finish, he takes a punch straight to the face and drops to the ground. Liho thanks him for the preemptive strike and welcomes him to round 2. The next chapter jumps to the annual meeting of the gods up in the heavens. Yang is trembling, terrified of presenting. He explains that since the Lord is kind of absent, he'll be handling the situation for now. But right then, Lucifer calls out to him, demanding to know what he thinks he's doing. Yang starts shaking all over, insisting he's not doing anything. He's just delivering a message, and then he'll leave. The message is simple. Same as always, everyone. If you find someone worth fighting, send word. That's it. Immediately, Lucifer slams his fist on the table, furious, asking if they're being mocked. He's sick of this meaningless routine, and now that bastard isn't even showing up here, he asks the other gods if they agree with this nonsense. And wait, hold up, isn't that guy in the back the one from Dragon Ball Z? That shady-looking bastard? The angels and everyone else stay silent, until finally someone reminds him that the purpose of these meetings is to maintain world stability. That's because unknown entities can appear anytime. Still, it's disappointing that they won't even show up for something so important. This speaker is the third-ranked god, the Divine Archer. And yeah, there are way too many so's in her name, so let's just stick with 3. Lucifer slams the table again, shouting that the world doesn't exist just to serve as entertainment for that guy. The entire place could collapse at any moment because of his negligence. And not only that, every time he tries to fix something, it ends in an even bigger disaster. Just look back at what happened to the poor Cyclops planet 1,000 years ago. The void creature known as Shabbath took a bite out of the planet, while Mu appeared behind it and struck another blow that smashed everything together. Lucifer knows that if all the gods had joined forces, they could have ended it without any damage to the Cyclops planet. But that bastard wanted to handle it alone. To Lucifer, that guy no longer deserves the position of a god. Meanwhile, Yang is just standing there, completely unsure of what to do. Why does he have to go through something like this? He just wanted Mu to come back soon. Back at the park, the kid's holding his face, asking if that bastard's lost his mind. He clearly doesn't know who his cousin is. That cousin is a professional boxer, and he's going to beat him to a pulp. Whack Cheol, standing to the side, comments that his hands are pretty quick, asks what sport he practices. Mu answers that he doesn't do any sport, he just fights because he enjoys it. The guy laughs, saying he must have some kind of high school syndrome or something like that. But fine, time attests just how good he is. He lands a solid punch right on the nose. The blonde doesn't look the least bit happy with that hit. That's because he could clearly see that Liho had been eagerly waiting for the fist to smash into his face, exactly like that bastard from the boxer. The only difference is this one's a freak. He's licking the blood. As always, he would never dodge the first punch. The blonde is already trembling, and Mu takes up a stance, asking if that's how it's done. He throws a punch while the guy thinks copying a stance is pathetic, but suddenly, boom. He takes a blow so strong he's dragged across the ground, tossed backward, wondering what kind of stone hit him. Meanwhile, Liho asks again if that's how it's done. At the moment of impact, he flexed every muscle in his arm, but because of that, his whole body is racked with pain. Still, this freak, this masochistic oddball, is loving it. I'd love to see the author use the same talent to draw lewd faces on women. The sensation of muscles bursting just from the touch, that was something he only felt from a handful of bastards back in heaven. It was pure bliss. But to keep fighting, he had to take care of this body. For now, he'd apply some rematches, basically fighting raps, but with an ancient name. Extra number 1 asks his brother what he's waiting for, tells him to finish this kid already. The blonde agrees, moves in, and asks if the kid really thinks he can win like that. He starts throwing a flurry of blows, mocking him for having such a big mouth while keeping such a lousy guard. Liho notices the guy's speed and accuracy, but it's all too simple. All he has to do is watch which muscle fibers twitch, and he knows exactly where the strike is aimed. The blonde feins toward the stomach, but it's actually a hook from the side, only to have it intercepted with a counter hook to his arm. And wow, the guy staggers, reeling. Immediately, he raises his broken arm, confused, and starts screaming. Liho notices that his reaction was identical to the other ones. They really were brothers. But then he kicks another blow straight to the jaw and collapses, unconscious. The fool left standing has no idea what's happening, while Liho steps closer, asking if it isn't time to finish what they started. The guy just begs him to back off. That's when Liho realizes, unfortunately, the guy has no will to fight anymore, and that makes it pointless. So he tells him, if you don't want to fight, just admit defeat, and we'll end this. The guy opens his mouth to speak, but takes a fist right in the nose. He clutches his face trying to say something, but Liho slams him again. A right hook to the jaw, another to the stomach, one to the chest. The kid suffers, his head nearly bursting, insisting he surrenders, yet he doesn't stop. He takes a knee strike too. Liho says this guy is incredible, truly tenacious. He refuses to admit defeat no matter what. Then he spits out a chunk of his ear and licks his lips, leaving another little mark. The guy's head is swollen, and he mutters that he's a crazy bastard. Back in his room, which has more cockroaches than furniture, Mu reflects that the fights are good, but this body breaks too easily. Just 2 punches and he's already battered. If he wants to keep these fights going, he has to take care of the body. So he decides to head back to heaven to see if Yang managed to prepare what he asked for. But the moment he tries to teleport, the attempt fails. He can't understand why it isn't working. Then we see what happened a few days earlier in the Divine Realm. Over in Lucifer's empire, when Mu had said goodbye and asked him to look after the boy, he mounted Yang, who asked how life on Earth was. Mu said it was pretty good, except that the body he was using was ridiculously weak. That's why he wanted a magical recovery orb, a type of item that could only be acquired on planets overflowing with mana. On Earth, there were only a handful of items blessed by divine grace or power, and anyone who managed to obtain one of those was considered a demigod among humans. So Mu told him to prepare it and said he was leaving. Yang, however, warned him about the gods gathering. Mu simply reached into his pants, pulled out a letter, handed it over, and said, "Here's my answer. Read it to them." Bye. He returned to Earth, and his body collapsed on the ground. But Lucifer was watching. He didn't know exactly what Mu was planning, but he was certain that Mu's body was empty. And since he hadn't even shown up at the gods' meeting, maybe he wouldn't be back for a while. A once-in-a-thousand-years chance had appeared. At that moment, Lucifer activated the taxidermy of life, and a storm of purple arrows rained down on Yang. But Yang noticed instantly, pulled back with a retreat maneuver, dodged everything, then stopped with swagger and demanded to know what Lucifer thought he was doing. Was this a declaration of war against the god of Earth? Lucifer then took flight, declaring that he would strip the Earth's god of his title. Yes, this was a declaration. Yang instantly unleashed compressed breath at him, but Lucifer smacked it aside, redirecting the attack as it circled the entire planet and exploded behind them. Even so had to raise a defensive barrier to protect all the other gods. The two glared at each other, and Yang shed his polymorph form, transforming into a massive dragon. Lucifer announced that next he'd deal with his master anyway. In the following chapter, Sososa remarks that this doesn't seem like the place for a conversation. Wait, what? Had Yang already been blasted away? Damn, I thought he'd last a little longer. She's about to leave, but Lucifer tells her to wait and to say whose side she's on. She replies that it doesn't matter, she's neutral for now. He accepts that, saying he just doesn't want anyone interfering. If anyone's against him, step forward now and they'll settle it immediately. Yang asks if he really believes he can defeat his master, but Lucifer just laughs, asking if he's talking about that person who abandoned the body of a god to take over a weak human body. In that moment, Yang realizes Lucifer knows the truth, and Lucifer says they've been drunk on their power for too long and neglected their vigilance. Loyal as ever, Yang lashes out with his tail, vowing he won't let Lucifer do as he pleases. But Lucifer simply vanishes, reappears behind him, slices his tail, and tells him he'll keep him alive for now because he needs Yang's help to get to Earth. Once there, he'll kill Mu and take control of the world. The poor dragon trembles in pain. Meanwhile, back on Earth, that guy whose ear our boy bit off for the second time is trembling in front of the coach, who's chewing him out. He doesn't even want to keep fighting anymore, but the coach just tells him to rest. The kid leaves, muttering that if it weren't for that bastard, he wouldn't be in this state. On his way out, he runs into Steel, the #1 fighter in the gym, who immediately asks what happened to his arm. Guakiel remembers, this guy is the strongest in the whole academy. Maybe, if it's him, it'll finally work. So the excuses begin. He says that nowadays kids are terrifying. His younger brother had been bullied at school, so he went there just to talk, but a whole gang jumped him and beat him up. Completely unfair. Steel brushes it off, just telling him to be more careful before waving goodbye. The blonde is left confused. Why didn't his sob story work? But then the guy stops and wants to know the exact name of the person who beat him up. Back in the room, the protagonist wonders why he can't return to the heavens. The only reason he loses control over something so simple is if there were some problem with his original body. But that doesn't make sense. Yang was supposed to be guarding it, and there weren't many beings who could defeat him. Maybe all the gods had joined forces to attack. He immediately gets up, saying this is no time to sit still. Those bastards had the audacity to attack his body instead of challenging him to a fight, which was even worse. But he forces himself to calm down. There's nothing he can really do right now, and Yang isn't exactly an easy opponent anyway. So for the time being, the best thing he can do is train at his usual park. Since his arms are wrecked, the plan is to strengthen the other muscles this body hasn't trained. Every sit-up makes his whole body burn, the muscles scream, and to him, that's pure bliss. He's laughing like a madman. All the old folks at the park stare in confusion. That's when someone calls out to him. He falls back onto the ground, and that girl from class approaches, asking why he hasn't been coming to school. Sitting on the bench, he asks what the point of going to school is anyway. It's not exactly a good place to train the body. She wants to know why he thinks like that. He says it's obvious. He needs to train to get stronger. She presses further, asking why he wants strength. He replies that it's to fight better, because right now he's still too weak to brawl as much as he wants. He goes on and on for hours, ranting about training muscles, strengthening his arms, improving his breathing, and so on. Eventually, she gets tired of it and asks what's the point of all that training if he doesn't even have anyone to fight. Just exercising won't do him any good. He has to go somewhere people create conflicts for no reason. Exactly the kind of place she's talking about, school. She tells him, be there tomorrow and stop being such a pain. She walks off while he thinks to himself that maybe she has a point. Those two guys from before, no way they ever come back after the beating they took. He needed to find someone else. But as soon as he stands up thinking about it, someone appears behind him and calls his name. Lee-ho grins. Seeing the punch coming his way, he thinks Earth really is the best place in existence. The next chapter tells Steele's story. He had only been an amateur boxer, and his sister was a promising ballerina. But with her beauty and talent, she attracted the attention of a stalker. The man's obsession grew until eventually he crossed the line and attacked. Steele showed up right on time, landing the first blow straight to the stalker's jaw. The problem was he stopped the crime too early. Because of that, no real investigation was carried out, and soon enough the man was free again. But now, with an even stronger obsession, he was far more dangerous. Steele stopped him again, but this time his sister didn't escape unharmed. The stalker had slashed her ankles and legs. From that day on, Steele no longer trusted the law. He decided to play Batman, walking around with a baton strapped to his back, beating down the city's trash. The thing was, he started anticipating people's crimes. Before they even thought about acting, they were already beaten. To him, fighting had become a form of judgment. And now Levo takes a clean hit to the face, shoved backward. The punch wasn't even that strong. Steele was clearly testing him, but that didn't matter. He threw the first punch, which meant the signal had been given. Levo had been wondering when he'd get to fight again, and suddenly this guy shows up. Perfect. Steele, however, demands to know why he's been going around beating people up. Was he trying to be some kind of gangster or what? But Levo just replies that he's not a fan of small talk, which ticks Steele off. He says fine and charges straight into the fight. The first barrage of punches comes and Levo dodges. The guy praises him, but then swings his arm to block his vision, and from behind that guard lands a hook. Yet again, the boy manages to defend. Steele compliments him and tells him to endure, then slams a heavy blow into his arm and another into his stomach. Levo notices the bastard is targeting the already injured parts of his arms, and just as he realizes that, Steele comes in from behind with a clean shot to the ribs, sending him staggering. Steele immediately says that he probably can't even use his arm anymore. But to him, when it comes to judgment, there's no such thing as mercy. Levo is trembling all over. Yet the kid isn't right in the head. He almost seems to be enjoying it. Steele can't believe this lunatic is laughing. And at that moment, Levo understands. There's no way to defeat this guy, not now. But still, he can't throw away this chance to fight. He needs to be cautious, stay calm, and avoid smiling too much. After all, even Mu had been defeated before. Still, he finds a way to enjoy it. At the same time, though, he also wants to win. In moments like this, he calms his emotions and carefully analyzes his opponent. The fighter swings for him, but Levo pulls on the cloth, making the punch land in empty space. Instantly, he slips to the side and counters with a sequence. The more Mu thought during a fight, the stronger he became. In those moments, he suppressed his emotions as much as possible. Even so, every time he got hit, he couldn't hide the fact that he was enjoying it. And once again, he has to force himself to calm down. But what the hell kind of face is that? He's clearly trying to hide his emotions, but it only makes Steele even angrier. Steele rushes in, yelling, "Does this idiot think this is a game?" At least Levo sidesteps the punch, steps back, plants his foot into the ground, and throws a handful of sand in the guy's face. The opponent spits, saying only criminals would use such dirty tricks. Then suddenly, Levo turns with that crazy look again, demanding to know why he's taking so long to attack. Come on already. That only fuels Steele's rage. He charges in and hammers a blow straight toward his face. But now our boy's gone full of boxer. He slips just out of the way. In the next second, Steele is already at his back and Levo narrowly ducks under his chin, impressed by the bastard's precision. Of course, honest one-on-one combat has existed since ancient times. The difference between fighters back then and fighters now was that in the past, a much more defensive style was required. The reason was simple. The ground was unstable and a single injury could cost you the match. Maybe because of treated flooring or modern shoes, people fight far more aggressively today. But they don't pay attention to exactly where they step, since they don't need to. Levo keeps dodging until suddenly Steele steps on a small rock without noticing. In that split second, the protagonist seizes the opportunity to strike him in the face, but when he raises his arm, it won't respond. So instead, he follows up with an elbow. And Dan, while he says it didn't cause much damage, it shatters Steele's glasses and now his head is bleeding. But Steele doesn't look the least bit amused. He slams the baton down on Levo's leg, sending him crashing to the ground. Steele then asks if he's having fun. He's certain this stupid kid is the type to laugh at people like that. Well, today's the day the joke ends. He raises his weapon, ready to smash it into the protagonist's face. Levo is convinced he's lost. He can barely even remember the taste of defeat. The last time was 4,000 years ago. But then, suddenly, something slams into Steele's head. He stumbles to the side, confused, wondering what just happened. Someone calls out to Lee Ho, and while Steele is distracted, he grabs his jacket, tosses it over his body, and bolts from the scene. At that moment, look who comes up from behind. It's Yang Yang, all small and tiny. Meanwhile, in the Divine Realm, Mu's body is sealed by Lucifer, who is convinced that now that bastard has no way of returning to it. In this completely isolated space, the soul couldn't enter. All that was left was for someone to break through Earth's barrier. This takes us back to before, when Yang Yang had been captured. Lucifer told him that once he finished off Mu, he would leave Yang Yang as the god of Earth. To him, the offer was perfect. Yang Yang mumbled something under his breath, and Lucifer demanded he speak up. The dragon then asked if this barrier was truly isolated and impossible to break. Lucifer confirmed, yes, it was absolutely impossible for any damage to be done to it. Right then, a glow filled the chamber, and Yang Yang thanked him. Inside his own body, he unleashed a massive explosion. Lucifer immediately understood the purpose of that question, to blow up the entire base. In the middle of the smoke and rubble, little Yang Yang bolted away, saying he had used up all his strength, and now had to get back to Earth to reach his master. But Lucifer was already coming after him, calling the damned lizard to stop. He pulled out his spear, warning that he would finish off both him and his master. He curled it with such force that it nearly caught the poor dragon's backside as he was pushed into a portal. The little guy shot down from the sky like a bullet. And who did he crash into? Steele, straight onto his head. Now Steele's twisted in the camera, muttering in shame that this is what happened. Lee Ho, however, stays quiet, grinding his teeth in anger, saying that Lucifer really is a bastard. But then he breaks into that peculiar grin, probably already imagining the chaos to come. The bastard pretended he didn't want to fight, but now he's stirred up all this mess, and it'll have to be fixed. He stands up, saying there's no way around it. This body has to get stronger so he can fight again. But immediately, his arm twists painfully. He realizes at this pace he won't be able to fight for a while. So he asks Yang Yang if he brought what he asked for. Of course, Yang Yang nods, saying he can be trusted. And then he vomits up a massive orb the size of his own head. It's a dragon's bloodstone imbued with healing power. If he had known things would be this bad, he would have brought more. Lee Ho takes it and says this one should be enough. The stone activates and his body begins healing. But he quickly notices this isn't ordinary healing power. His muscles already feel more alive. Maybe it's some sort of enhancement to the body itself. Yang Yang, a little proud of himself, admits he used a bit of his own power to tweak it. The little guy put in real effort. Lee Ho tells him to consume what's left, but the dragon decides to save it, since it might be useful later. The scene shifts to another little dragon, Dolly, the one belonging to that girl from class. She coos at him, saying he's as cute as always. She wishes she could talk to him all day, but she sets him inside his little house and says goodbye before heading to school. Back in class, the kid who got beaten up has suddenly turned into a nerd. He's decided to change his life. Honestly, the delinquent path never suited him anyway. He needed to stop with that nonsense and focus on studying for real. But just then, Lee Ho opens the door. The kid almost soils himself. Lee Ho asks if he wants to fight, while the girl behind him says finally he showed up. He looks to the side and admits she convinced him. He's here now to look for someone to fight. She's confused, wondering if he's going to try something weird. Meanwhile, in the room downstairs, someone asks Steele if he's heard about the second-year kid who got castrated. Apparently, some blonde had been bullying him, but the kid fought back and even bit his ear. At that detail, Steele remembers the blonde who had his ear bitten. Without a doubt, it was him. Which means the bastard responsible was that guy, not the protagonist. He was already on his way out, saying there was no reason to fight the boy, while the protagonist sat there with something clearly weighing on his shoulder, muttering that nothing good had happened today at school. Everyone else just stared at that chalkboard, and he didn't even have anyone to spar with. But then he spots Steele ahead. From the shape and distribution of the muscles, he instantly knows who it is. He shouts out loud that it's the same guy from before, and when Steele sees the lunatic coming at him, he bolts, wondering how the hell this bastard recognized him. The guy was wearing a mask, glasses, and even had his hood up, and yet Lee Ho is there with that peculiar grin, happily chasing after him. Steele ducks into an alley, and Lee Ho follows right behind, but the place is empty. He had been so ready for a fight, especially now that his body was healed. Just then, Yang Yang slips out and says he'll track down the person from yesterday. Since the bastard had touched him, all he needed to do was follow the scent. He heads forward but stumbles into someone's foot. Looking up, he asks what they're staring at, and it's that girl from class. Of course, since she already had a pet lizard at home, she instantly falls in love at the sight of him. Yang Yang puts his tiny hands on his hips, telling her to step back, but she just grabs him and lifts him up. He warns her to be careful, that he's extremely dangerous. If he could use magic, he could easily get rid of her. He thought she wouldn't understand, but she's standing there, puzzled, asking what this talking lizard is supposed to be. To her, it was just way too cute, maybe even cuter than her own Dolly. But Yang Yang wriggles free and scrambles onto the protagonist's back, apologizing, saying he had been captured because he was too weak. The girl immediately presses Lee Ho, asking if this little thing is his friend. Lee Ho glances over and says, yeah, you could say they're friends. Finally, we learn the girl's name, Yujin, and right now she's dying of jealousy toward him. The protagonist makes a mental note of this, then raises his foot and asks if she wants to keep Yang Yang for a while. Of course, she doesn't refuse. In the blink of an eye, Yang is in her room, hands on his hips, pouting like a tiny brat. Liho had told her he was hunting for someone, so for now she should take care of him. The lizard fan instantly agreed and basically tossed Yang onto herself. Before leaving, Liho reminded him that when he passed by again, Yang should return on his own. The dragon wanted to know where he was going, and Liho answered he was off to train. Back in her room, Yang introduces himself as the secretary of the Great Master. Since he was given the order, he'll cooperate with her for now. Seeing his little hand stretched out, she feels a tug at her heart and taps it with 2 fingers, saying she'll help him too. He might not believe it, but she's the class president. He doesn't really get it, so she explains it means she's basically the leader of the class and ranked number 1. Yang gets excited, saying no wonder the master chose her, but then he pauses. Wait, wasn't the master supposed to be the leader? Yujin, confused, tells him that Liho isn't even ranked that high. Yang bursts out, shouting that's impossible. The master is the strongest of all, and he refuses to believe otherwise. If she's the class leader, then the master must be the great leader. That's how it should be. He keeps lecturing her, saying that from now on she has to do her absolute best to make him the strongest. Yujin agrees but tells him he'll have to come see her regularly. The little rascal is thrilled. His plan to extract information was working perfectly, and in his mind he thinks that helping her out a little to push the master up to rank 1 is the ideal approach. Deep down he swears it won't be long before he's at the very top of the world again. Meanwhile, our boy is back at the park, going through his daily training. His body had improved significantly after the pill. The effect on his body was outstanding, and most of the muscles that had been torn now grew back even stronger. The question now, was he ready to withstand something tougher? He slams his fist into the steel bar at the park. What the hell? His hand comes out completely intact. That little orb had made a huge difference. He glances back as if sensing someone, but no one's there. Looks like the guy isn't showing up for a fight today. He decides he'll talk to him tomorrow at school. He leaves the steel bar behind him, now marked with the imprint of his hand. On the way home, something catches his scent. It's Yang perched on Yujin's shoulder as she browses through some clothing shops. The moment he picks up the smell, he waves goodbye, leaps off, runs across the rooftops, and lands right onto our boy's shoulder. He says not to worry, he managed to gather tons of information from the girl. As they keep walking, something's clearly going down in an alley. Yang tells him to wait. He's picking up a scent from that direction. In the alley, some upstanding citizen is insisting he's not a criminal, saying all he did was steal a bike. Bastard. Of course he says this right to steal. The guy who beats people before they even commit crimes. Imagine what he'd do to an actual thief. The man gets pounded into the ground. But in the middle of the beating, someone shows up behind him. When Steele turns to check, Yang is pointing toward a ramen shop. He insists that's where the awful smell is coming from and that they should head there instead. But obviously, our boy knows that's a bluff. The two lock eyes and Steele asks him to wait, saying they must have some kind of misunderstanding. Liho doesn't care. He charges and Steele takes up his stance. They close in, but instead of striking, they glare at each other. As always, the protagonist waits for the opponent to throw the first punch, while Steele doesn't seem too eager to start. Then suddenly, the thief grabs Steele's baton from behind and swings it. Steele dodges aside, and of course, you know what happens next. The strike goes straight for Liho, landing square on his head. He grins, asking excitedly if it actually touched him. A trickle of blood runs down, and in the very next second, he drives his foot into the thief's stomach. Steele slips around the side, recovers his baton mid-spin, and smashes it across the thief's face. Liho keeps going, headbutt, another headbutt, rapid strikes to the chest, a crushing blow to the stomach. The man collapses, crying out for help. Liho grins, but then the smile fades as he mutters that this is boring. When he first arrived on Earth, every fight was brutally hard. His body ached with every clash. But this kind of one-sided beating? Completely dull. He needed someone on the level of that guy. Speaking of which, that bastard had slipped away. The moment the fight started, Steele had bolted. Looking back, he saw the lunatic grinning ear to ear, enjoying himself. Yang, meanwhile, was standing there all cute, saying he needed a proper meal. But Steele kicked him aside as he ran off, leaving the little guy abandoned. Not long after, Steele arrives home, wondering why that kid enjoys fighting so much. And then his sister appears, announcing that the prosecutor has arrived. Earlier that day, she had arrested another criminal. This was Kang Hyuna, his sister, the former ballerina. She shoulders past him, telling him not to get in the prosecutor's way. He doesn't move, and she comments that the boy is tougher than expected. Heading into her room, she orders him to make some noodles without eggs. Steele notices that she doesn't seem to care much anymore about what happened back then. But ever since that day, all he feels during a fight is pure rage. It wasn't always like this. When he first started boxing, things had been different. The scene shifts back to school with Yang perched on Liho's shoulder, apologizing, saying he had been too hungry yesterday. Everyone's staring, wondering why this kid is bringing a dragon to school like it's normal. Then he spots Yujin, who lights up right away, happily greeting Yang. The protagonist asks if she found out the information he asked for. She nods and tells him she knows that guy. He goes around under the nickname Iljime. It's a name combination that means someone who hits people. and he's famous for exactly that, beating down anyone who messes with him. But she wants to know why Liho is so intent on finding this guy. Did he do something bad? Liho explains it's just that this guy keeps running away every time, and when he finally catches him, he won't let him escape again. But while he's saying that, the guy is standing right next to him. Steel leans close to his ear and whispers for him to stay after class. He picks up his baton and walks away. Yujin asks if they know each other, but our boy just stands there with that peculiar grin. The scene cuts to class. Liho is excited, even blushing, saying he can't wait for class to end. Yang is perched on his leg. A little later, he hands the little dragon back to her again. Yang is exhausted and nauseated, but of course she happily accepts him and leaves with a smile. The moment she's gone, Steel appears. Liho thanks him, saying he's been waiting. Steel tells him to shut up and starts putting on gloves. The protagonist wonders if those are hymentes, the ancient protective wraps. Steel asks if he likes to fight. Liho shakes his head. If he thinks he enjoys fighting, then he's wrong. What he actually enjoys is the pain and the shock that runs through his body when he gets hit, the muscles screaming with every movement he forces. From the past up to today, only fighting has made him feel alive. You could say he fights out of necessity. Steel, seeing him smiling and flushed, knows this bastard is lying. He digs into his bag, pulls out another pair of gloves, and tosses them. Liho catches them right against his face. Steel tells him to get ready. Liho slips the gloves on and charges forward, saying he's been dying to fight someone who isn't just a petty thug. He throws the first punch, but Steel dodges, annoyed that the lunatic is so impatient. Then he calms himself, remembering there's no reason to be angry. This fight is exactly why he came here. He steps back, framing it in his mind like a boxing match in a ring. The body has to stay relaxed, no tension, or the movements will be stiff. Liho rushes in again, but this time, bam, Steel lands a clean right and follows with a left combination that leaves the boy staggering. Now Steel is beginning to enjoy it. A full rotation of the torso, transferring all the force straight into the fist. This sensation was fun. This was real boxing. Liho, however, after taking the hits, thinks to himself that if it weren't for that pearl he consumed earlier, this would have been dangerous, which meant this fight was incredibly fun. Meanwhile, that person in the other room, someone from the night study group, is trembling. Turns out it isn't Steel's female friend at all, but actually a guy. They'd left a letter with a snack for him, asking why he always fell asleep when he came. He stands, mutters that maybe it's not too late, and heads out. On the stairs, he notices something happening outside. Honest, heavy blows, Liho taking a full sequence, until suddenly he stretches his leg and plants it right into Steel's chest, landing a crushing kick. Steel shouts in frustration, asking what the hell that was. They're supposed to be boxing. The protagonist, however, asks what exactly boxing is supposed to be. If it's a fight, then why limit yourself to just using hands? He throws another kick, this one landing square on Steel's forehead. And before Steel can even react, a heavy strike crashes into his shoulder. Now Steel is the one taking the barrage, wondering how this kid's kicks could be so powerful. Then he notices another coming for the back of his leg. He knows if that one lands, he's going down. The kick connects full force, but nothing happens. Liho steps back, realizing with dread the strengthening effect from the dragon's bloodstone had worn off. Steel notices too and asks if the boy has just lost his strength. Steel is laughing and the protagonist is laughing right back. Neither of them throw in a move, both realizing the other is just as crazy. Meanwhile, someone's at the doorway, watching everything, muttering that the sight of these two idiots laughing while fighting is pathetic. He despises people like that, just looking on in disgust. But while he's wrinkling his nose, the two of them are enjoying a straight-up brawl. Liho tries to lift his leg into a defensive stance, but Steel punches him in the leg itself, throwing him off balance, then follows up with a clean shot right to the face. Now our boy's getting wrecked for real. With that flimsy body that barely has any muscle, there's no way he could take down someone who's trained like that. If only he could use a little magic or something along those lines, then maybe things would turn around. He starts to rise, forming a faint trace of magic in his hand, tightens his fists, and leaps in with a punch. Steel compliments the effort but blocks it easily, saying that little jab is way too light. But then, something passes by Steel without him realizing. The next second, he feels a presence behind him, turns his head, and bam, something slams into his chin. Dazed, he stumbles, thinking at least Liho's punches are weak. But before he can recover, more are coming from behind. When he turns again, headbutt, straight to the face. The protagonist is amazed this is actually working. To use mana, you're supposed to concentrate all your energy in one spot. But when you do, it's not just mana that reacts. Particles in the air, dust, impurities, whatever, get pulled in too. Normally those burn away, leaving only pure mana. But since he doesn't really have proper mana, what he's creating are basically little air bubbles or something like that. He never thought he'd fight like this, and honestly, going up against Steel has turned out to be really interesting. Then he lunges in, trying to bite Steel's ear. Steel shoves his face away and shouts if this lunatic is trying to castrate him too. Hell no. He admits defeat right there, saying there's no need to cross the line like that. He covers his face, saying next time he'll make him pay. Meanwhile, Liho is just there licking his lips. Cut back to Yang now wearing a little backpack saying that's enough for now. Yujin tells him to let her know if he needs anything else, and he just thanks her before heading out. On the way, he spots Steel returning and instantly remembers this is the bastard who kicked him. Perfect chance to finish him now. He drops the backpack and charges straight at him, only to get nailed with a punch to the gut that sends him crashing back to the ground. Lucky for him, Steel just walks off, leaving him drooling and unconscious until Liho finds him there later. Next day, our boy shows up at school wearing new clothes, and now Yang even has his own little backpack. Yang asks what he thinks of this fresh new vibe. All of it was thanks to the effort he'd been putting in with that girl. Just then, Steel walks by, noticing him, and asks why the hell he's in uniform on a Saturday. The protagonist has no idea what Saturday even means, which leaves Steel even more puzzled about this kid. Steel calls him over and asks if he doesn't enjoy fighting. Liho lies again, saying he only fights out of necessity. But Steel remembers. There's no way that's true. He tells him to hang out with him for a while. With him around, boredom from lack of fights would never be a problem. Liho smiles instantly, saying he really is a good friend and that he can't wait to find a place where fights never stop. All the while, Yang sits in the backpack silently plotting to kill Steel. Next chapter, Friday, at Guryong School. One of the bathrooms is off limits. Inside, some guy leaning against the wall asks how much the kid brought. The worn-out boy says 20,000. The 40-year-old man laughs in his face, telling him he must be out of his mind. That amount is nowhere near enough. That guy is Yangzhou, and the kid in front of him is the same one who stole the bike and later got beaten up by the protagonist. He says it was all because of Steel. Right then, Yangzhou slams the wall and says they're gonna make that bastard pay the price. He tells them to call everyone so they can settle this. That was on Friday, and now we're back on Saturday with Steel saying that before he used to fight only out of anger, but now he feels like he can actually enjoy a good fight. The protagonist, though, wants to know why they don't just fight each other instead of going around looking for people. Steel tells him to relax, soon enough they'll have a rematch. And right at that moment, they notice a strange cloud of smoke coming from the side. Steel quickly realizes it's cigarette smoke and wonders how many packs they must be burning for the smoke to get that thick. He already pulls out a mask and glasses, convinced it must be some thugs. When they get to the alley, someone in the back is saying to just report they didn't find anything. Steel walks in, one of the guys slaps him in the face and asks what the hell he's doing there. Was he trying to get his wallet stolen? Yep, he gets smacked across the cheek and drops to the ground. Right then, the guys panic and he sees that the alley is full of the whole gang. Unfortunately, there were more of them than he expected. That's when the protagonist shows up behind them ready to fight. He's just standing there, waiting for someone to throw the first punch so he can hit back. And then one of them grabs his leg, asking if that bastard is with them. Liho turns around and asks if the guy really just pinched him. Too bad for them. Now he doesn't need to hold back anymore. And just like that, the fight is over. Everyone's already laid out on the ground. Liho can't believe that these guys who act all tough in the city were actually that weak. He picks up a wallet off the ground to return it to a girl, his classmate. But right at that moment, Yang warns him that more people are coming. It's Yangzhou, who had gotten a message about Steel showing up. He grabs his baton, trying hard to stay calm. Meanwhile, Liho is getting more excited, saying this is the perfect situation for him. A dirty, chaotic brawl with no rules at all. The two of them are already throwing punches left and right, but then, bam, he takes a hit to the head and gets slammed into the ground. Yangzhou asks who the hell this weirdo is, since there was only supposed to be one. And that other kid, who saw them fighting in the classroom, is wondering why he hasn't been answering messages. Right then, he notices the fight going on in the alley and says these guys are pathetic. Did they really have this much free time? But then something surprises him. His name is Haejun, and his father was an MMA champion. To the boy, his father was always a strong man. But then one day, a needle fell nearby, and strangely, his father kept getting stronger and stronger. He got drunk on that juice. The boy began to notice he was going insane, and unfortunately, his father wasn't just strong in the ring anymore, he became violent at home too. From that day on, he looked more like a monster than a father. His mother fled to escape the abuse, but Haejun couldn't leave since he had to stay and protect his younger brother. Still, every time he kept watching his father fight, memorizing how he moved and learning every technique. Eventually, the son grew to match his father in size, until one incident changed everything. Haejun finally snapped and landed his first hit right on his father's face. From that moment on to him, fighting was the same as surviving. His father shouted, calling him an ungrateful bastard, swearing he would kill both of them with his bare hands. Damn seriously. Haejun actually killed him. That escalated quick, from 0 to 100. He had to spend a year locked up in juvenile detention. When he got out, he had to start working to support himself and his younger brother. In a situation like that, he didn't even have the right to get hurt or sick. He had to take care of his body because that was how he supported his family. And that's why he thought it was pathetic seeing people fight recklessly without any care. He swore he would never act like that. But right there in the alley, the red-haired girl turned out to be his younger sister. His name is Haejun, and her name is Daljun. Yangzhou is standing there asking who the kid is, while Yang is calling out to our boy. At that moment, Haejun comes up from behind and lands a kick right behind the knee, dropping the guy. Before he could even realize what happened, Haejun grabs his face and slams it into the ground. Yeonyeongs are all messed up, calling for his master to wake up. Then, bam, he takes a hard kick from Haejun, who goes straight for the next opponents. He's beating down everyone, and eventually it's just him and Steel, face to face. Haejun says those filthy bastards never should have crossed the line. Steel asks him to wait, and Daljin calls for her brother. He gets thrown off for a second, realizing he didn't know about this, and right then the guy charges. Steel tries to throw a punch, but Haejun just ducks under, shoves him back, grabs his sister, and runs off. But in the process, her wallet falls out again. Now Haejun still has to get past Yangjo, who's yelling if he's lost his mind. Yangjo cocks back for a punch that looks like it lands clean, but it was actually Liho who stood back up. Haejun doesn't understand what this kid's deal is, but he just ignores him and runs. Meanwhile, the protagonist is laughing, thrilled, saying this is amazing. Steel tells him to cover his face before he gets spotted, but by the time he looks up, both of them are already gone. He grits his teeth, swearing those bastards are screwed. Then we cut to Steel explaining, that guy is Yangjo, one of the well-known delinquents around here. He controls the northern area. In the central area, it's a guy named Du Gayen, and in the south, a guy called Chungo. The three of them together form something called Godori. That group is the biggest source of trouble in the region. He's trying to explain the whole mess, but Liho just wants to know what the hell he's talking about. What's this about delinquents, extortion to steal money, and what the hell is a Godori? Steel, annoyed, asks if his brain is just there for decoration. That's when Yeonyeong pops out of the bag saying he's had enough and can't hold back anymore. He calls Steel a bastard and says he won't let him talk to his master like that. Steel is baffled by the talking frog while Liho just shrugs and says it's kind of a friend of his. Steel says this kid is way too suspicious. He doesn't understand the most basic things, and now he's walking around with a talking creature. He must be that. Liho compliments him, saying humans sure have sharp observation skills. He claims to be a god, but Steel asks if he's an alien instead. Obviously, Steel laughs off the idea of him being a god, saying he's way too stupid for that, and our boy doesn't even know what an alien is. Meanwhile, Yujin is confused about why everyone ended up at her place, but as soon as she has Yeonyeong in her arms, she tells them they can stay as long as they want. Steel decides to cut it short, saying that the big guy he fought earlier is their current target, that damn Yangjo who's been causing trouble for everyone. Liho remembers that fighting that guy gave him a feeling he hadn't had in a long time, the massive difference in their weight. It had been ages since he'd struggled like that. He thinks it'll be a good experience, but right away he tells Steel of the body he has now, it's impossible. He needs a lot more training. Steel invites him to the gym, but Liho refuses, saying he's not interested in training in a place where they only use fists. He needs something more diverse, more natural, and intense. While he's saying all this, Yeonyeong is looking at something on the phone and then waddles over, all cute, asking him to take a look. In a live stream, someone lands a clean punch right on the kid's solar plexus, and he drops to the ground unconscious. The orange-haired streamer girl says that makes it 3 wins in a row, and whoever dares to challenge and actually beats them will get 1 million won. The protagonist immediately looks further down in the description and sees that it's Chungu's challenge. Right away he remembers. That's one of the names the guy had written on the board. Now he's got himself a new target. First, he'll take down Yangjo, and then he's going to defeat the entire Godori. Meanwhile, up in the skies, the brawl is going down. Lucifer is throwing everything he's got and then some at that big sphere around Earth, but the thing is still intact and he can't believe it. That damn mole used to make things vanish so easily with just a touch. This whole structure broke apart and he went right through it. So why can't he do the same now? At the same time, down on Earth, Yangjo is fuming with rage, pounding on the door of a public restroom, leaving the poor guy inside, trying to take a dump, completely confused. He walks off, and in the end, they didn't get anything done. They didn't recover any money, and they didn't catch that damn seal either. The curly-haired one, though, says at least he managed to grab this wallet here. But when Yangjo takes it, just 3 coins fall to his stomach, and he asks if the guy wants to die. That's when he notices Daljin's card falling out. As soon as he picks it up, of course, his expression changes, and he says he's found something useful. The next day, the protagonist was following a little map that the president had drawn. A guy was strolling by with his dog. Our protagonist calls out to him, but the guy ignores him. Only his dog catches the scent of Yeonyeong from the backpack, goes crazy, growls, and jumps in to bite him. Poor Yeonyeong, he came from the heavens just to suffer on Earth. He warns that the day he has magic, that dog is going to die too. After following the path drawn by the president, he runs into that girl from the video, and she's rejecting a bunch of people. She sees the uniform and asks if he's from some place called Badulji. He doesn't understand what she's talking about, and Yeonyeong just says it must be the name of some group and tells him to say it. So he says the name, and she wants to know what his experience is. He's confused, so she tells him to state it. Is he a street fighter? A boxer? What does he do? He's standing there, trying to think of something, counting in his head. Then he blurts out that he has 3 million years of fighting experience. Of course, the guy's in the back laughing in his face, but the girl says it'll be fun. Clearly, she's not all there. The entry fee, though, is 50,000 won. Yang sneaks up behind him and drops the cash into his hands. Turns out Yang must have stolen it because back at home, Yujin is asking her mom where her wallet is. Look at that. It's in the kid's bag, already emptied out. The only problem is the total came to 46,000, but the girl says fine, she'll let it slide this time. They walk on, and then he notices the guy in the green hoodie beside them. As always, he sizes up his muscles and realizes the guy's well-trained. Now he knows it's the same one from yesterday's video, the one called Godori. But then, as expected, a mummy-looking figure shows up with a shredded six-pack towering 3 meters tall. Her little friend introduces her, saying she's the champion with 3 consecutive wins. In the middle of the introduction, though, the protagonist steps right up, fist already cocked. Since it's a fight both sides agree to, he doesn't have to wait for a preemptive strike. But the little girl steps in front and asks what he thinks he's doing. He has to watch the live streams first. She shows him the paper and explains that this is a tournament. He can't just go around fighting randomly. A match had already happened, and now was the protagonist's turn. In the 4th fight, he's announced as the self-proclaimed fighter of 3 million years. His opponent, the martial arts master known as the Golden Disciple. Everyone starts placing their bets, and some are actually putting their faith in our boy. Just then, Yang in the backpack spots that filthy dog from earlier in the crowd. He remembers it's the bastard that bit him, and he shoots out, landing next to our boy. He doesn't get why Yang is doing this, but the creature says he's going to participate too. Right then, the dog runs to the other guy's side. The girl announces that this is amazing. It's a fight with pets included. The 3 million year fighter versus the international martial arts master, and Yang versus Cerberus. But the crowd is baffled, wondering why the guy's pet is a lizard with wings and horns. Still, like everything in this world, they just ignore it completely. The girl declares the fight is about to start. The so-called international student then asks if the boy is familiar with the martial art called Sangwon. My god, it was a style that mimicked animal movements in combat, impossible to survive against, so he better watch out. The guy lunges in, calling out that this is the feline technique, only to be greeted with a cannon blast straight to the gut. His face twists all up and he falls to the ground in agony. Liho, completely uninterested, says that just because he's imitating an animal's movement doesn't mean he's actually an animal. There was absolutely nothing special about it. The guy gets back up, hurting all over, but he realizes with just one punch the size of the wall standing in front of him, he has no choice but to use that one technique, something his master told him was the last resort, extremely dangerous, something he should always save. Man thinks he's Rock Lee now. He puts his hands on the ground and gets into position, while Liho is left confused. At the same time, Yang, honestly, I don't even know if he's already done for or if the fight hasn't even started yet. Guess it's starting now with that Chihuahua making the first move. Damn, speaking of the dog, he pulled off some kind of footwork shifting left and right. The girl even comments that he must be some kind of ninja dog to pull off a clone technique like that. Yang, though, sees the attack coming and shouts that he knows the middle one is the real one. But surprise, Lil Mutt actually pulled it off. He dashed aside and sank his teeth into Yang's neck. The announcer calls it an incredible feat with a clean follow-up. Cerberus starts the fight, taking control. Now everyone's more interested in what that guy is doing down on all fours. He charges forward and the crowd bursts out laughing, saying he's fighting like some four-legged beast. Even his own master is watching, thinking about how he warned the kid never to use this in front of anyone because he'd only embarrass himself. Watching the attack come in, Liho figures the strike has to be low since the guy's down on all fours. But when he closes in, the guy suddenly leaps up, then lands a full-on tiger-like paw strike straight to his face. What the hell? Liho is shocked. If that had been an actual beast's paw, he really would have died. Immediately, the guy stops and comes back again, now mixing in a cat strike, a chihuahua move, even a horse kick. Good lord, the crowd is stunned. They've never seen a human pull off quadruped-style movements with such precision. It was nearly impossible to predict, which he absolutely loved. Looking at the Chihuahua, he figures he just needs to think of this guy as another kind of four-legged animal, and everything should work out. When the guy goes for his next attack, Liho crouches down, activates the muscles in his legs, and springs up, vanishing from the front and soaring into the air with everyone recording. Before the guy can react, he crashes down on his head with a stomp, smashing his face into the ground. He declares that the weakness of quadrupeds will always be attacks from above. Everyone who bet on the other guy cries out in despair while our boy is wondering what happened to Yang. That's when he looks over and sees the poor little dragon completely wiped out. Man, why is he always so weak? The violent Chihuahua is standing there staring him down. But then the mutt flips onto his back. He's using that ability of his, strong against the weak, weak against the strong. With that, both the master and his fighter are declared losers, and our boy wins the fight. Seeing the dragon by his side, people in the crowd are already Googling where to adopt a winged lizard. The fights keep moving along until match number 6 arrives. This one would decide the second finalist. Would it be the self-proclaimed fighter of 3 million years, the one who beats Sang Yangquan, or the guy representing boxing? And guess who shows up? it's Guak Cheetle. I thought that guy had already retired. The story goes that our boy has 1 win and 1 loss against him. I don't remember him ever losing, but if that's what they say, I'll take their word for it. Lee-ho looks excited, remembering the fool who always collapses in agony after getting hit in the face. The blonde guy, though, thinks he's got a shot, telling himself that all he has to do is keep his guard up. The two face off and the fight kicks off with both charging forward. But Lee-ho lands a punch so hard his whole hand hurts because he's a total lunatic. And he punched the guy's cast. The blonde tells him he's an idiot. A cast is on him exactly because of him. But the protagonist is there dying in pain, which to him means he was thrilled feeling alive. The blonde realizes, as always, this guy was strangely dangerous and he had to be careful. His plan at first was to throw some jabs and then finish with a kick. This guy thinks he's a fighter, so no way he'd see that coming. But Lee-ho, of course, notices the muscle fibers in his leg activating. The blonde is watching excited, but our boy blocks the attack just like Steel did to him. The fool loses his balance, and right then, he smacks him on the chin. He copied everything Steel had done. The guy falls to the ground, and immediately he goes in to bite him again. No way. The crowd groans in disbelief. Did he leave another mark on the poor guy? And with that, we reach the final. The shredded mommy with the abs versus our 3-million-year fighter. Whoever won would take home 1,000,000 won. Before the introductions even finish, the protagonist already charges in only to get clipped on the side of the head. But the tough guy manages to defend, realizing her kick was seriously fast. He keeps pressing forward while she fights like that kid from How to Fight, backing away, hands in her pockets, all swag. The protagonist knew she wasn't going to be an easy opponent. It was time for him to put that weird, ugly face of his to use. The girl asks if he's hurt, if he's in pain, what's going on. But he just pushes in again with that strange look, and now he's met with a rising kick straight to the head. But his strategy was to use the spin from her kick to launch his own right back at her. It knocks her cap off and nearly lands square on her face. The girl is impressed that he managed to pull that off, and our boy realizes the only reason it didn't connect was because he's only 5'6". His short frame was really a disadvantage. But the buff mommy, who's honestly growing on me, charges in to stomp him, and she lands a strike on his guard, instantly following up. I'm telling you, these teens are straight out of Dragon Ball. Look at this. She goes for another hit, and he vanishes like Goku with instant transmission. He's already behind her, using that quadruped style he copied from the other fighter. Against someone who relies on kicks, staying low is way better, and he moves in again. She tries for a low kick, but he dodges it easily. She realizes she's never trained in low kicks her whole life, so fighting this way is hard for her. And the kid who got beaten earlier can't believe the style that took him 5 years to master, this boy picked up just like that. He figures it can't be that good yet. But his teacher is red in the face, which probably means it really is. Then the girl tries another big kick, but the protagonist slips to the side and appears behind her. When she turns around asking where that pest went, she senses something coming. She throws a spinning kick, but it's just her cat that he left behind. Now he's right in her blind spot, activating Sangyong style in Bahamut mode. The next chapter kicks off saying Mew was originally from Earth, but he didn't stay there exclusively. 3,000 years before becoming an entity above all others, he went to Lucifer's planet. Apparently, it wasn't by choice. But unlike Earth, that place was overflowing with mana. As a result, all the creatures there evolved rapidly and became known as monsters. And Mew grew stronger and stronger fighting them. Among all the quadrupeds he faced, the strongest was Behemoth, and now he's channeling the authority of that creature, thinking to himself that the secret of the technique is adjusting his muscle control to match the monster exactly. He charges straight at her abdomen and slams down with a Behemoth paw strike that sends the girl flying. Damn, she crashed down on the bench holding her stomach in pain, but the protagonist was already rushing in, ready to crush her with his hands. He was coming in fired up, but the little girl suddenly stepped in front and said the fight was over. Since the opponent stepped out of the ring, she was disqualified, which meant he had won. Everyone thought the ending was really anticlimactic. The girl just said that's it for today's broadcast, called out our boy, and told him to come get his prize. But then they went into an alley, and she told him that to claim the reward, he had to beat everyone. The truth was, up until now, he hadn't faced the real challenge. To win 1 million, there was still one more opponent, and then she turned and smashed him with a flying knee straight to the chest. She revealed she was the true final boss, the damn Chunbu from Godori. And the worst part was that Lee-ho saw the muscle fibers in her leg activate. But since he always waits for the first attack, he let her hit him. This time, though, maybe that wasn't the best choice. Afterwards, she passed by the shredded mommy with the abs, warning her to be careful next time because they almost lost 1 million and then left. While Lee-ho was there, writhing in pain, shouting for that witch to come back, he was still trying to endure it and keep fighting. Right then, he told Yan-Yang to grab the orb. But where was Yan-Yang? That's when we see that kid from the classroom fight, the one who got beaten up. He was running away with Yan-Yang stuffed in a bag, no doubt about it. He wondered how he ended up in that situation. It all started with a betting site Guak Cheetle had introduced him to. He just wanted to make a little money, but things spun out of control. 5 million vanished. Now he was on the run, saying he remembered a place where students could trade things for collateral. He walked into a room, dropped Yon on the table, and the guy there asked what kind of creature was all tied up like that. The kid showed his phone and said it was a species called tuatara, an extremely rare animal that only exists in New Zealand. All the guy had to do was look at the phone. It looked exactly the same. But another man commented that clearly this thing was a mutant, since it had horns and wings. The kid yelled that collectors would definitely pay a fortune. He said he'd asked around and people online said they'd pay hundreds of millions. The man in purple standing in the corner seemed to give a signal, and the deal went through. In the end, he only got 1 million, but for him, that was fine. He could use it to buy other things. He was walking out all happy when someone stepped in his way and tossed Daljan's student card on the table. He said that was the collateral. The man told him to take off his hood. Turns out he was pretending to be Daljan, and the guy pointed out that the photo was way too edited. Still, the student card was worth 500,000 won. Damn, that was actually valuable. Looked like it worked. He left and someone asked if it was a success. He replied that it was easy, but he never wanted to go back there again. Too creepy. That was Grandma's pawn shop, and the man in purple was there spinning cards around. Then the blonde stood up and said, judging by appearances, the guy wasn't going to pay. Was that really okay? The man in purple tossed the card against poor trapped Yon and said it was fine. Just because they couldn't pay didn't mean they couldn't collect. Next chapter. Yujin is panicking because Yon has disappeared. The protagonist assumed the little creature must have run off to her, but apparently not. Now she's frantic, searching everywhere, saying he couldn't have gone far. She ran around, desperate, shouting for Yon. She opened the door, tore open every cabinet, while Liho stood there confused. Then a teacher grabbed her, asking what she was doing in another classroom. She was supposed to be sitting quietly in her seat. She told our boy that she had already checked every single room and Yon wasn't in any of them. He says of course not, because he didn't disappear here. She wants to know where it happened, and right then he shows her the map. She remembers it's the same map she had drawn, and he tells her that's exactly where he vanished. Immediately, she takes off running, but the teacher chases after her, grabs her by the collar, and sits her back down in the chair. Liho is completely disappointed. He couldn't even fight properly, and the most frustrating part is that his body's condition was still trash. Just a few small scuffles already made him feel like he was at his limit, and that's exactly how he likes it, because that way he can fight with sheer willpower. He stays calm, telling himself he just has to recover, get Yon in the orb, and then get back into the fights. But as soon as class ends, Yujin is already pulling him through the hallway. Kangkil asks what's going on, why they're running around like that. At the same time, Daljan is asking if anyone has seen her wallet. Yujin suddenly asks if the two of them are a couple. From their awful expressions, it's clear they aren't. She then asks for help, explaining she lost her little dragon. Could anyone help find it? The guy asks what kind of lizard it is, and our boy says it's a dragon. He used to be gigantic, but now he's shrunk down to this tiny size. His skin color doesn't exactly make you want to eat him, but his back is nice and smooth, perfect for flying. He's just rambling. Meanwhile, the three are already running off. For him, this is perfect. While those guys are out searching for Yon, he'll focus on recovering and training. Switching back to Yangzhou, another gambling addict. Good lord, how do people even believe in casinos? Imagine thinking the people who created the game to make money are going to let you win money. Such innocence. Look at this perfect example. Yangzhou is celebrating after winning, but when he tries to withdraw, it's locked. 6 days have passed since the search for Yon began. Liho keeps staring strangely at the teacher's muscles, while the two girls in the class are still out searching, even putting up missing posters. A whole week has gone by looking for the little dragon, and our protagonist couldn't care less. Yujin apologizes for taking up the other girl's time, but she replies she doesn't really spend much time studying anyway. Still, now she's angry that the worthless pet's owner is the one looking the least. She says she's going to grab some drinks and will be back soon. But right then, the blonde shows up behind her and spots Daljan's name. Oh no, the loan was taken under her name, and now she's the one who has to pay the price. When Yujin comes back, Daljan is gone. A few days earlier, we see our boy staring at the teacher's muscles. The teacher asks what he wants. The kid is just staring at his deltoids, imagining that's how he should look. He even starts touching the teacher's chest, who blushes red and says he trains a lot. His muscles were solid. The teacher, flattered, says, this kid actually understands the world. That's when the protagonist says fine, he's decided. He wants to train with him now. Back in the present, Daljan is facing the guy holding her card, demanding he return it, saying it belongs to her. The blonde replies that they already know that, but she has to pay back the money she borrowed. She says she's never even heard of that, but someone in the back slams the table. It's the man in the purple hood telling her she took money and now wants to play dumb. She better quit the act and make the payment. The blonde adds that he has her card because of the loan she took. She asks how much the loan was, and he says 500,000. But since some time has passed, it's gone up by 50. She answers that it's not even that much, so she'll pay it in a week. He puts the card away in the drawer, says fine, but tells her to come back soon, because he's not in the mood to hunt her down again. She leaves, saying for him to hold on. She'll be bringing the money soon. She knocks on the door, and the blonde says kids these days are all a damn disgrace. The purple-haired guy asks if he's talking about him, and the blonde quickly apologizes. Looks like it must have been someone from school. A while later, an argument breaks out inside, and the guys lock up the room and leave. They hide the key the classic way, just like everyone who sticks it under the mat, this time placing it in the plant. The blonde heads downstairs, but Daljin had seen it all. No way was she going to hand money to those filthy scammers. She walks over to the door, immediately notices the key beside it, and turns the knob. But just as she's going in, someone's coming down the hall. She rushes to the drawer, grabs her student card, but then hears a sound nearby. When she opens it to check, it's Yang shouting for help. But there's a shadow behind her. When she turns, it's Yanjo. He covers her mouth and tells her to keep quiet. He recognizes her as the wallet girl and says he knows she's here to get her student ID back. He's here for the same reason, so both of them better stay quiet. Later, she's already walking away through the corridor, saying that little creature really does look like the one from that cartoon. Stealing someone's pet was disgusting. The owners of that place were truly terrible people, but she hadn't realized everything was being recorded. The next day, she arrives at school and calls out to Yujin, who asks where she had disappeared to. She vanished out of nowhere, and Yujin had been worried. Daljin apologizes but says she brought something for her. That's when Yang pops out of her backpack and Yujin hugs him tight, saying she missed him so much. But Yang already smells his master and flies off into his arms. The protagonist, however, feels a sharp pain through all his muscles and ends up throwing him to the ground. Realizing it's Yang, he apologizes, saying he's been training so hard lately that his whole body is sore. Yujin scolds him, telling him to stop mistreating the little guy like that. Meanwhile, over at Grandma's lawn and office, they're watching on camera as Daljin escaped with Yang, and right after, Yanjo passed through as well. The blonde complains that they lost 2 student IDs and even the lizard collateral. What are they supposed to do now? The purple-haired kid is obviously furious, wanting to beat someone, blaming the blonde for losing the keys. But in the end, they brush it off. Even if they didn't get that money, it was just a small amount. The real problem was that the kids had broken into the office. That was the real offense. Next chapter, an honest little soccer game. Someone fires off the evil shot, hitting Liho square in the face, and he just smiles with blood dripping to the floor. And of course, he's about to punch the guy. Good lord, he slams him right in the stomach. While everyone's asking if he's lost his mind, the protagonist says this PE class is awesome. Meanwhile, Yujin decides to teach the dragon how to use a cell phone since Liho doesn't care about anything. At least this way they could communicate. He just had to send a message. Yang is completely confused, not understanding phones, texts, or Wi-Fi. She says she'll explain, but right then he spots the guy who captured him sitting in front of them. I thought he was going to run, but instead, he lunges, biting the guy's head, shouting that he's the damn kidnapper. The guy grabs him from behind and hurls him away, but Yanjon jumps back into the chase. The protagonist is getting chewed out by the teacher, who warns him that if he keeps getting into trouble, he won't help him improve his body anymore. But right then, the fool bumps into him. Since he struck first, Liho instantly retaliates, declaring that class is back on, but the teacher stretches his neck out, yelling at him to stop. Class ends and everyone heads home, while our boy says PE is the best class of all. He wishes he could have it every single day. Yujin replies that's normal, but she knows he doesn't understand what that class is really for. What she wants to know is, doesn't he have training today? Wouldn't he rather leave Yang with her? They're chatting away while nearby, Daljin is talking with a friend and Heijin is on his phone, saying he's on his way. But right then, she runs into Yangjo, beaten up and demanding she hand over her student ID card. She asks who he is, and he just says that the 2 of them were caught on camera, so she better hand it over. The 2 girls are confused, not understanding, but he warns them that if they don't hand it in, their faces will end up as wrecked as his. He says it's better this way, then reaches into her bag to grab it. But from a distance, guess who's watching? Heijin and Steel. They're not happy, and they charge forward immediately. The protagonist doesn't understand, but he notices something. Yangjo is holding Daljin by the neck when the 2 arrive. He takes 1 punch to the face and 1 to the chest. But then, what does our protagonist do? He steps in front to protect Yangjo. He even says that Yangjo came to challenge him first, so why are they ignoring him? Everyone's confused, even Yangjo. Seeing the chaos, Yangjo grabs Daljin by the arm and bolts. The chase is on, with everyone pursuing him until they corner him in an alley. Steel remembers this alley well. It's the same place where that gang of delinquents was before. Yangjo throws Daljin to the ground and calls them out, saying that now, with no one around, they can all come at him. Bold, especially considering he'd already taken a beating before. The protagonist says he'll step up, but Heijin tells him to wait, warning him to stop messing around. If he hadn't blocked that attack earlier, they wouldn't even be here right now. Liho, however, says he doesn't care. If he wants to fight, then let's settle it. But Yangjo grabs his arm, which aches from training. Our boy locks eyes with him and goes for a punch, but Yangjo dodges, grabs his shoulder, hooks a leg behind him, and slams him to the ground. The protagonist is stunned while Heijin rushes over, grabs his sister's arm, and decides that in a situation like this, the best option is to run. Yangjo's furious about losing the student card, while Liho, lying on the ground, realizes the training worked. He couldn't feel a thing when Yangjo slammed him down. All he had to do was contract his back muscles, expand them, and he was fine. He gets up. Steel asks if he needs help, but he refuses. Yanjo swings a heavy slap toward his face, but this time he dodges. Still, the bastard catches him by the arm and throws him down again. But once more, Liho notices the impact didn't hurt at all. Maybe the training really was working. Except no. My God. It was poor Yang Yang on his back taking the punishment. Yanjo moves in to stomp his head, but Liho dodges, gets up, and calls him a bastard, shouting about what he did to poor Yang Yang. Now it's his turn to go on the offensive. He unleashes a barrage of punches. Yanjo is baffled. Those punches hurt way too much for someone so light. But our protagonist keeps going, fired up, saying this is all for revenge. Yanjo rushes in, trying to body check him. Our boy sees it like a massive boulder charging his way. He braces, expanding the muscles in his leg to stand his ground. Was he pushed back? Yes, but he's still standing. Steel offers to step in, but he refuses. The weight difference was still too much to fully overcome. Even so, there were no stones his fists couldn't crack. He charges again, aiming at weak points, breaking them little by little. He ducks under an arm and smashes a punch into Yanjo's ribs, then behind his thigh. Yanjo turns, but he's already on the other side, striking both thighs again. Yanjo crouches low, yelling at him to stop fighting like a rat. And then, out of nowhere, he shouts for Steel not to interfere in their duel. The protagonist turns to say the same thing, but sees that Steel is standing still. And that's when Yanjo sneaks up behind him and locks in a chokehold. He's already celebrating, saying he caught the rat. The protagonist is struggling to break free, while Steel wonders if things aren't getting dangerous. The protagonist calls out, almost asking for help, and Steel rushes forward. But right before he gets there, the protagonist shouts not to interfere. Under no circumstances should anyone help him. He wants to deal with every situation himself. He realizes what Yanjo is doing, crushing the blood vessels, stopping blood from reaching the brain, and soon he'll black out. But all he has to do to stop it is contract the neck muscles, break the hold, and slip his arm underneath. By throwing all the forearm strength into that position, not only does he stop the choke, he also squeezes Yanjo's arms. The moment Yanjo feels pain, the protagonist slams him with a headbutt and forces him back. Yanjo mutters that this bastard really is a psychopath. Liho, meanwhile, notices that the unbreakable stone was starting to crack. It was time to aim right at the center. Finally, we see the training arc I've been waiting for. A few days earlier in the gym, the instructor was showing him how to squat. The man was all hyped up, saying that leg pumps were the best thing ever. Liho observes the muscle activation and agrees it really was an excellent workout. As soon as the teacher leaves, he goes straight for the barbell. But the teacher warns him to wait. That weight is way too much. He'll hurt himself. Liho laughs, saying it's funny he thinks that's heavy. But his skinny little legs are wobbling like noodles in all directions. The instructor warns him again that he'll get injured, but he insists it's fine. Mugen had always been a master of the art of muscles. Master might not even be enough to describe it. He could control every muscle in his body, redistribute fibers however he wanted, and strengthen others. The man could even shift muscle mass from his legs to his arms, somehow, and blow up a pyramid. No form of muscular control was difficult for Mu. The only reason he stopped using it was that once he gained too much muscle, this technique became unnecessary. But now there's Liho, arms looking tiny, dropping into squats. Back to the fight, he shifts all his muscle into his arms. Steel asks if he's okay. And in that moment, our boy remembers that rotating trump punch he used before. Yanjo tries to defend, but it's too late. The stone shatters and he collapses unconscious on the ground. Liho looks down at him and smiles, saying he's beaten that bastard. The first card of Godori had been torn apart. On the way home, Heijun asks his sister if she knows who that weirdo was and why he was following her. She apologizes for not saying anything sooner, then tells him the whole story. How she lost her wallet, the blonde's threats, the day she ran into Yanjo, and everything that happened. Heijun is seething with rage and she realizes she's in trouble now. He isn't going to let this slide. He knows those guys will keep using money as an excuse to torment her. He immediately calls the class president and says that unfortunately, he won't be going to school today. The scene shifts to Grandma's rental office. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and before the man in the purple coat can even react, he takes a clean hit to the head and starts getting beaten down. Strangely, the blonde cheers, saying he deserves it. His friend asks what the hell he's doing, but the blonde just apologizes, saying he's going to make a call. He brings in two gangsters from the next room. But Heijun still didn't fully realize that the demon's blood he hated so much was running through his veins. He charges at the first thug. One punch, and the bald guy is knocked clean out into the street. And then, chaos. Everyone in the room gets destroyed. He spits on the bastard, saying they better not come asking for money, because he never took any. The guy in the purple hood, all beaten up, asks if Heijun even knows who he is. Heijun replies that he doesn't care. If he keeps bothering him, he'll just come back again. Then he leaves, stepping on the bald guy on his way out. One in purple seats with rage, wondering what he should do next. Walking down the street, Liho has Yang Yang sitting on his head, looking weaker and weaker, saying that the fight was fun. Steel, though, wants to know how the kid made his arm grow like that out of nowhere. Our boy explains it's easy and even demonstrates, Steel tries, but of course it doesn't work, and Liho tells him it's because he still doesn't know how to properly communicate with his own muscles. He needs to learn how to listen to each one, since every muscle is different and requires attention. When his heart and muscles become one, speaking the same language, only then can he control them and do whatever he wants. Steel struggles with it, getting nowhere, while Yanyon tells him to stop teaching secret techniques. But Liho says the stronger Steel becomes, the better it is for him too, because the only way to get stronger is by fighting stronger opponents, and he has to evolve a lot, since he needs to defeat that damn Lucifer. Yanjong tells him to relax, that guy won't be able to invade this planet because of the barrier. But Liho says, unfortunately, he don't have much time. Sooner or later, the barrier will collapse and Lucifer will come to Earth to show what he's capable of. That's why, from now on, it's nothing but training. The scene shifts to the man in the purple coat, trying to explain the situation to another gangster. He says he'll raise the interest rates and recover all the money. No need to worry. The man in glasses tells him to calm down. There's no reason to get so shaken over one loss. The business world is full of ups and downs, and this was just an experience. What he wants to know is how he had so many people backing him and still lost everything. But it's fine. He hugs him and says he'll take care of things. That man is Choi Sangel. Now, everyone who had been in that room has been completely torn apart. The guy with the bat on his back wants to know how they got beaten up and robbed by a high school kid. He points the bat at the blonde's face, tells him to open his mouth, and when he obeys, he drops something on his tongue and orders him to leave. In the elevator, Sangel tells the hooded guy that the stuff he gave him isn't bad at all. The problem is that his targets were students. There's no profit in squeezing kids. He tells him to come see what's happening. In front of them is an octagon, a crowd screaming all around. The hooded kid asks what this is, and the older man says it's a game he controls. He tells him to watch that boy fight. And there he is, the same blonde as before, now radiating steam, muscles bulging. The hooded one wonders if he's always been like that, but before he gets an answer, the fight starts. The blonde charges in, grabs his opponent's arm, slams it down, snapping it instantly, and cracks him in the face. The blonde is having the time of his life, shouting that his power keeps growing, barely believing this is really him. Sangel holds up a pill and explains, that's the effect of just one. With it, he can always decide who wins and who loses. The kid in the hood thinks to himself that with something like this, he could finally crush that one person. Meanwhile, Liho is at the gym, training hard, and damn, the kid's become a ball of muscle already. He tells the instructor that if training makes your thighs burn like this, then it's amazing. The instructor that looks at his arms and legs and says he's seen plenty of people who claim they know how to train, but he's never seen anyone improve this fast. He asks if the boy's been using something. Liho just answers and it's because he's weak. The instructor misunderstands, thinking he means he's using some substance, and tells him to cut it out immediately, that it's extremely dangerous. But the boy says he's weak, way too weak. After all, to fight against that guy, he's nowhere near ready yet. Someone even commented that they should give the little lizard a bath and bring him some bugs to eat. Poor thing has been working overtime and hasn't complained once. And wouldn't you know it, the very next chapter, there he is, all intact, lying across our boy's back with a little foam on his chest. He says he got a call and sticks himself to his head so the foam stays pressed to his ear. It's Yujin yelling, asking why Yanyo hasn't shown up at her house all week. She wants to know where he is. Meanwhile, the boy has turned into a full-on muscle mutant, saying he's heading out to test his training. And right at that moment, look who's waiting in the alley. That sly girl from before, saying the results today were good. Then he shows up, saying he's really happy to see them both. The little girl just replies that he didn't understand the message. She wants more. And bam, she charges right in, landing the same knee strike to his chest. She gets excited, saying that one landed clean. But he only staggers back a little, standing there intact, smiling. At the moment of impact, he shifted the muscles in his chest over the bone to shield himself. Now her kick was far from critical, and he pushes forward. Our protagonist is bulked up now, totally juiced. This time, the tables had turned. He had the weight advantage. He nails her with a heavy kick that sends her flying to the side. But the feisty girl clamps onto his leg, insisting she won't lose just for being smaller, and smashes an elbow right into his knee. Our boy hesitates, and she points out that he's gotten tougher. But that just means she has to go all out. While he's still looking down at his leg, she rushes in and unloads a barrage of elbows to his chin. She goes for another strike to the ribs, but realizes that for some reason none of her attacks are landing properly. Then she notices her leg is stuck. He's trapped it with his muscles. He counters the Yangzher's technique, grabbing her and slamming her into the ground. He goes in to stomp her head, but she vanishes. That's when he drains the muscles from his upper body, shifts everything into his legs, and leaps at her. Mid-air, he switches again, pumping it all back into his upper body, then uses his weight to body check her backward. The abs mommy asks if she's okay, while she wonders if this boy might actually outtrain Yangzhou. She immediately says she's joining in and goes for a kick. But Liho had already adapted to her greater height. He stomps down to close the gap and goes straight for her face. Looked like he was about to land it, but Chun-gu cuts in and cracks him with an elbow to the face. Even then, he keeps smiling, reaching for her face, only for the other girl to stomp down on his head. The two of them unleash a barrage of attacks while poor Yang is caught in the middle, suffering for nothing. But Liho is thrilled. The training was worth it. His old self wouldn't have lasted this long. The only problem is figuring out how to beat one without the other interfering. Yang mutters that the two of them are unfair bastards. That's when Liho says he's got an idea to extend his attack range. Before Yang can even respond, he grabs him by the tail and charges forward, declaring it's now 2 against 2. The girls are stunned as he swings Yang in a flurry of strikes, smacking both of them in the face. But Chunbu lands a punch on his hand and rips Yang out of his grip. The little guy goes flying while our protagonist takes a beating. Still, he powers through, snatching Yang again and swinging him back into the fight. But Chunbu thinks to herself that using any weapon only creates vulnerability. All she had to do was close the distance, and nothing would work. I thought it wouldn't succeed. But then she nailed him with a clean shot to the jaw. Yang went spinning away, but our boy had already tightened the muscles in his neck. Damn, speaking of a beast, she launched a dragon kick. But our boy slammed her with a headbutt, sending her crashing to the ground. He comments that strengthening the neck is perfect in this situation. You absorb the impact that would shake your head and at the same time use that force to deliver a headbutt. While Yang was blocking Ab's mommy, she rips herself free and charges straight at him. Bam, a brutal kick right to his ribs. But he had already shifted his muscles, caught her leg, and copied her own technique, driving an elbow into her knee. Still, she flips up and fires off a spinning kick midair. Even then, he snatches her other leg. Normally, he prefers punching to grappling, but this time it was back to the old method. He locks in an ancient Egyptian leg hold, twisting her into a knot. The poor girl screams in pain, her muscles burning as he twists harder. She cries out that she surrenders and begs him to stop. But he says it's time to leave his mark. She suddenly spins and cracks him in the face with a kick. He asks what the hell it was about. She said she was done. So why did she still have so much energy? He rushes again, but she unloads a quick combo, tells him to take it, and then vanishes. Left behind, he finds himself with the money in hand and Yang lying on the ground. He puts on her cap and says that next time he'll make sure to leave a bite mark. Meanwhile, Ab's mommy is running with Chunbu in her arms, shouting for her to wake up. Honestly, I wish I knew this woman's name so I could stop calling her mommy, but since it never gets revealed, what can I do? The scene shifts. Yang is stomping through the city, furious, with his ear all bandaged. Nothing has been going right for him lately. Those damn kids at school have ruined all his plans. He kicks a rock down the street when suddenly someone asks why his face looks like that. The purple-haired guy, Kwak Digyan, wants to know who's been beating him up. Yang tells him to back off unless he wants to be the next punching bag. He grabs him by the collar, but it's the hooded kid, who swallows one of those pills and instantly bulks up, turning purple and muscular. Yang is blasted against a wall, teeth flying. The next day, we see the two girls walking through the city, one without her cap, the other with a lump on her head. Suddenly, they run into that bastard again. They demand to know what Digyan is doing there. Once more, he swallows that drug, bulks up, and sneers that the two of them are unlucky. Something swells in his chest, his body radiating an aura. He explains that the first side effect is the personality turning violent. Chunbu asks why his body is expanding, and he simply says it's already settled with Yang. Once he finishes with the two of them, there will be no Godori left in this city. He'd be the top dog. He charges at her, and though she's confused, she dodges to one side, then the other, before snapping a whip-like strike across his head. It was Ab's mommy, but it didn't even faze him. Chunbu comes in, slamming her elbow into his skull, but all it does is hurt her own arm. They're both shaken. Hitting him felt like striking steel. His body was far beyond what a human should be able to withstand. He grabs her leg and delivers a brutal kick that shatters bone. Chunbu curses the bastard, tries throwing a punch, but no matter what she does, he's unscathed. He grabs her head, tells her to cut it out because it only tickles, and then smashes her into the ground. Just like that, another one down, crushed in the same place. Digyan laughs, saying it's pathetic. This level of Godori is far too low. He walks off, saying everything's going to be easy to handle. Ah, so now it's clear. This guy must be that kid from the protagonist's class, or maybe not. Either way, he's face to face with the purple-hooded man, who asks if he's enjoying the performance. The guy says yes. This stuff is driving him crazy. He feels like there's no way he can lose to anyone. But one in the purple hood tells him that now that he's finished off the Godori guys, he has to help wrap up the job he asked for. Digyan says not to worry. Help crush whoever he wants. But then he asks the hooded man why he doesn't just take the pills himself and finish everyone off. That's when we see the truth. Sangel had warned before that the stronger someone becomes, the worse the side effects. First, your personality turns violent. And in the end, if all the side effects kick in, you literally explode. With he lies, saying he's a little sick on medication, so he can't take them right now. Meanwhile, the protagonist is strolling through the city with Yang, looking for something. Turns out they're hunting down the missing Godori members. Later, back in class, he asks Yujin where the school of those girls he fought before is. She doesn't care about that. She's more interested in admiring Yang. But he insists, so she finally draws him a map, Now he's on his way, cap on his head, Yang on his back. When he arrives, poor Av's mommy is hobbling on crutches with a broken leg. They come face to face and she spots her cap on him. The scene then cuts to the hospital, where he asks what happened to the girl, or rather the boy, since they're referring to her that way. Mommy explains they were ambushed and beaten badly, and obviously it wasn't him, even if he's also a psychopath. She called the police, but no one came to the school and no one else has seen the attacker, the bastard Digyan. Then he hears someone groaning behind a curtain. When he pulls it back, there's Yangjo completely wrecked, twisted and broken. He struggles to speak, saying it was that damn Digyan who left him like this. He says he hates them all, but he'll explain what happened. The guy attacked him, swallowed some drug, and suddenly became unbelievably strong. Yangjo used to be the weakest in all of Godori, but out of nowhere, he became the strongest opponent Yangjo had ever faced. Liho had always thought Yangjo was one of the strongest people. He never imagined the poor guy didn't stand a chance, which means no matter what, he'll have to fight this person. He demands to know where Digyan is. Mommy says even the police can't track him, but Liho says that's fine. He'll find him on his own. Back at school, he's stuck carrying boxes. The teacher tells him the secret is to turn your whole life into training. That way, you're always working out. The protagonist hauls the load, but his mind is elsewhere. How is he supposed to track down this Digyan? While he's thinking, someone slips by behind him, phone in hand, saying they're looking for him. The voice on the call warns him to be careful, to move for somewhere safe, but he replies that no way, he's going to settle this right here and now. He storms into the classroom. He's looking for Heijun. With the pill swallowed, he smashes the door clean off the wall and calls him out, saying today he dies. He grabs some poor kid sitting nearby and hurls a chair straight at Heijun, shattering the window. Before Heijun can even ask what's happening, Digyan charges in, saying there's no talking, and smashes his arm into him, slamming him against the lockers. Looks like Heijun is in for a beating. He dodges another strike, but Digyan's hand sinks straight into the metal wall. Heijun fires back, saying this is self-defense, and lands a punch right to his face. Shockingly, it actually seemed to do some damage. He follows with a barrage of blows. Chest, face, stomach. But the guy looks unbothered. Heijun nails him with another shot to the chin, but clearly nothing's working. Digyan crushes his entire hand, and everyone in class is left confused, wondering who the hell this guy is. At the door, Steel and Daljan show up, wanting to know what all the commotion is about, and that's when she realizes it's her brother. She throws a sandal at his back, telling him to get out, but he just says no and winds up to blast her in the head. Steel steps in, punches him, and demands to know what Digyan thinks he's doing. At the same time, Heijun comes in with a knee from above and an elbow down onto the guy's arm. He manages to break free for a moment, thinking this bastard went way too far trying to lay hands on Daljan. The two of them rush him from opposite sides, while downstairs the teacher and the protagonist hear the chaos and wonder what's going on. Some students pass by, Godori fight fans, and the teacher bolts, saying he can't let this happen. The protagonist drops the boxes he was carrying, saying he has to go too. But Yangyong, peeking out of the backpack, tells him to wait. He can feel mana in that place. Back in the fight, when the two came in throwing punches, Digyan glanced at them, but Steel slipped under his arm and landed an uppercut to the chin. He ducks under again, a little confused. This guy was incredibly strong, but his attacks were ridiculously simple. Digyan loses his temper, calls him a bastard, and tries to grab him. But Heijun sweeps behind his knee, dropping him to the floor. As he turns, he takes a sharp jab right between the eyes. No matter how tough the body, there are always weak points, and the two of them start pounding him. He shoves them both away, looks at the door, and bolts, knocking through everyone in his path. He runs up to a bald guy at the back of the room and demands another pill. The bald one, confused, asks what he's talking about. But Digyan just orders him to hand it over. They don't have time. He already told him to grab that kid. That's why he's here. And then, damn, the bastard in the purple hood was this bald guy all along. Now that Heijun knows, things aren't looking good. The bald man shoves the pill into his body and tells him to take care of it. Digyan bites down on it immediately, saying no problem. Heijun charges in, but from the camera angle it's obvious. He's about to be thrown, and sure enough, he gets smashed straight into the wall. Steel joins him, tossed aside as well. The guy had turned into a purple Hulk. Even worse, Daljan runs over, calling out for her brother, but he goes to grab her head. Just then, the teacher steps in, scolding him, saying that even if a student is working hard at the gym, that doesn't mean he can go around beating his classmates. He tries to assert his authority with sheer strength of grip, but loses and ends up running off. That's when the protagonist arrives at the door and Yangyang warns him. He can feel mana radiating from that man. The bald guy realizes that little creature is the collateral he lost and lunges for him. But he trips on a sandal on the floor and smashes face first into the protagonist. This time, Liho doesn't say a word. He just grabs him by the head and crushes him with an elbow. The bald man collapses unconscious, and his partner is ordered to finish the job. Of course, he charges forward, saying no problem. The punch comes, but the moment it hits Liho's chest, the power fizzles out. Yangyong had used his ability to drain mana, wiping out everything the guy had. That doesn't mean the guy didn't throw the punch, but now Liho nails him with one clean to the face. As he keeps pounding him down, Yangyong is baffled. Where was that mana coming from? A short while later, the guy is already a wreck on the ground, and Liho remarks that he was far too weak. He looks at Yang Yang and tells him to return the mana. He needs it for training. The little dragon obeys, but warns him to be careful. That mana wasn't ordinary. It was extremely pure and powerful, something that should have been almost impossible to find on Earth. Liho knows this exactly. A mana like that can only be guaranteed if a god directly delivers it. But there's no way a god could be sending mana to Earth right now, which is weird. The only other creature that could possibly do that. He immediately looks over at Yang Yang and asks if it was him. Strangely, the little guy is all red, embarrassed. And right then, Digian stands back up in front of them, towering. The next chapter jumps 1,000 years back to the divine realm in the domain of the Cyclops god. Mu charges forward and the monster raises its mace, telling him there's no way he'll be able to win this. The strike slams down hard on the ground. Mu had already disappeared, and with one single punch, he shatters the mace along with the Cyclops' entire arm. The creature shrinks down, crying, begging for forgiveness. But Mu just replies that he'll only stop once he's entertained, then walks away, saying he'll be back soon and that the Cyclops better prepare better next time. Back to Yang Yang's side, he says this was too boring. It wasn't even satisfying. At that moment, he gets an idea to help his master. Next thing, he's showing a stone and using a crushing ability that turns everything into powder. He swallows the powder, then spits it out on top, mixing everything together and forming a weird little ball. But that ball held his mana. He even draws little doodles to show that it had been condensed with his body's power. He then explains that Mu just needs to give this to the enemy before the fight, and the battle will be way more fun. Mu grabs a big piece, but Yang Yang warns him to be careful. That was way too much. He had condensed magic, so it would be better to use a smaller one. Still, Mu runs off, saying he's going to have fun and will be back soon. But just seconds later, he comes running back from the same direction, beaten down by someone, saying the effect really was strong. The transformed Cyclops shows up beside him, and Mu goes in for a straight-up brawl. He slams one into the beast's chest, sending it flying into a boulder that, at that moment, falls toward planet Earth. Or actually, doesn't land. It bounces off the planet, smacks Yang Yang right in the face, and only then falls onto Earth. Liho comments that apparently someone discovered that thing. It really was something incredible. But Digian comes charging with a punch. He dodges, focuses his muscles into his hand, and lands one straight into his chest, realizing just how insanely tough it was. The guy comes again for another strike, but Liho bends back, dodges to the side, and Digian slams down, crushing the ground. The entire school shakes. Students, poor things, are all thrown off the ground, even our protagonist, who, midair, gets grabbed by the shoulder. The guy says he's caught the rat and goes to smash him straight in the head, sending our boy crashing into the wall, his clothes shredded. Damn, this time it really hurt. He then asks Yang Yang how long this will last, and Yang Yang answers that with that amount, at most 5 minutes. Liho looks doubtful, but Yang Yang tells him to be careful. It's better to hold off for now. In 5 minutes, he'll win. But of course, the protagonist is thinking he has to take advantage of this because there won't be another chance to fight this guy. This, for real, is the biggest problem of them all. The goal isn't to run away from the fight, but to land a ton of likes on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers, activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.